Growing up as Charlotte Kensington's daughter wasn't easy. Every breath I took, every step I made was carefully monitored and judged. My father, Jonathan Kensington, CEO of Kensington Global, had my entire life mapped out before I could even walk. "Olivia, darling," he would say, adjusting his perfectly tailored Armani suit. "A Kensington never settles for second best." Our estate in the Hamptons was a symbol of that philosophy. 30,000 square feet of curated luxury, every room dripping with wealth and power. But to me, it felt more like a gilded cage than a home. By the time I turned 25, I had followed my father's blueprint to perfection. Stanford Business School graduate, senior executive at Kensington Global, and engaged to Preston Lockwood III, heir to Lockwood Enterprises and my father's hand-picked future son-in-law. There was just one small problem. I was desperately, hopelessly in love with someone else. I met Ryan Carter on a rainy Monday morning when my Rolls-Royce Phantom broke down on the way to work. He was the mechanic who came to my rescue, arriving in a battered tow truck with a grease-streaked t-shirt and a smile that made my heart skip a beat. "Looks like your timing belt shot," he said, wiping his hands on his worn jeans. "I can fix it, but it'll take a few hours." Something about his honest brown eyes and the way he spoke to me, not at me, made me agree to wait at his small garage instead of calling my driver. That decision changed my life forever. Over cups of terrible vending machine coffee, I learned that Ryan wasn't just any mechanic. He had worked his way through MIT, graduated at the top of his class, and had offers from Fortune 500 companies. But he turned them all down. "Life's too short to spend it doing something just because it looks good on paper," he told me, his eyes twinkling. Those words hit me like a thunderbolt. For the first time, someone had put into words exactly what I had felt all my life. One coffee led to another. Then dinner. Then stolen moments whenever I could escape my suffocating world. Ryan never asked about my family's wealth. Never tried to impress me with extravagant gifts or Michelin-starred restaurants. Instead, he showed me the beauty of simplicity, midnight drives along the coast, picnics in hidden parks, nights filled with laughter and warmth. For 6 months, I lived a double life. Society princess by day, myself by night. But I knew it couldn't last forever. The breaking point came at a charity gala at our estate. Preston was droning on about some multi-billion-dollar merger, while my mother paraded me around like a trophy. "Olivia will be taking over the East Coast division after the wedding," she announced to a group of socialites. The Kensingtons and the Lockwoods. Imagine the possibilities. I felt like I was suffocating. Excusing myself, I fled to the garden, my trembling fingers already dialing Ryan's number. "I can't do this anymore," I whispered into the phone, tears streaming down my face. "I can't marry Preston. I can't be who they want me to be." Ryan was silent for a moment. Then he said the words that changed everything. "Then don't be. Be who you are, Olivia." That's the person I fell in love with. The next morning, I walked into my father's study, my heart pounding, but my resolve firm. "Daddy, I need to tell you something," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "I can't marry Preston. I'm in love with someone else." The explosion that followed was nuclear. My father's face turned red with rage as I explained about Ryan, about wanting a different life than the one he had planned. "A mechanic," he roared, slamming his fist onto his mahogany desk. $500 million worth of Kensington bloodline, and my daughter chooses a grease monkey? "He's an engineer, Daddy," I shot back. "And he's brilliant. If you just met him." "Absolutely not." My father's voice could have shattered glass. "You will marry Preston as planned, or you can forget about your trust fund, your position at the company, everything. Is that clear?" I stood up straighter, channeling a strength I didn't know I had. "Crystal clear, Daddy. Goodbye." Walking out of that study was the hardest thing I'd ever done. My mother's hysterical tears, my father's threats, the whispers of the household staff, they all followed me as I packed a small bag and left the only home I had ever known. Ryan was waiting outside his modest apartment, worry etched across his face. When I told him what happened, he shook his head. "Olivia, that's your whole life you're giving up. Your family, Your inheritance. I can't let you do that for me. I silenced him with a kiss. I'm not giving up my life, Ryan. I'm finally starting it. The next few months were a crash course in reality. I moved into Ryan's tiny one-bedroom apartment, got a job as an entry-level business consultant at a small firm, and learned how to live on a budget. It wasn't easy, but for the first time, I felt free. My parents' attempts to bring me to my senses ranged from emotional manipulation to outright threats. They froze my accounts, canceled my credit cards, and even tried to get me fired from my new job. But with every obstacle, Ryan and I grew stronger. When we decided to get married, we planned a simple ceremony in a local park. No designer dress, no society photographers, just us and a few close friends. The morning of the wedding, I received a text from my mother. Your father and I will be attending. One last chance to fix this mistake. My heart raced as I showed Ryan the message. It's your call, love, he said, squeezing my hand. Whatever you want. Despite everything, I wanted them there. So when I walked down the makeshift aisle in my simple white dress from a department store, my eyes instantly found them. My father stood stiffly at the back, looking like he'd swallowed something sour, while my mother dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. Neither moved to join the ceremony. During the reception, a casual barbecue in the park, they made their final play. Olivia, darling. My mother's voice dripped with desperation. It's not too late.
Preston would still take you back.
Think about what you're throwing away. My father, as always, cut straight to the point. This is your last chance, young lady. Stay with this person, and you'll never see a penny of your inheritance. Is that what you want? To live in poverty? I glanced at Ryan, who was chatting and laughing with our friends, completely at ease in his rented suit. Then I looked at my parents, trapped in their world of wealth and expectations. What I want, I said clearly, is to be happy. Ryan makes me happy. If you can't understand that, then maybe we don't need your money, or you in our lives. My father's face turned that dangerous shade of purple again. You are no daughter of mine, he spat before storming off. My mother hesitated for a moment, then hurried after him. As they disappeared into the night, Ryan appeared at my side, wrapping an arm around my waist. You okay? I leaned into him, watching my past walk away. Never better. That was 6 months ago. We settled into our life together, working hard, loving harder. Ryan continued at his garage while taking night classes for his master's degree. I threw myself into my consulting work, slowly building my own client base. We were happy, truly happy, even if it meant watching our spending and clipping coupons. But there was something Ryan hadn't told me. Something that was about to turn my world upside down again. Everything changed on a seemingly ordinary Friday evening. I came home from work early, excited to surprise Ryan with takeout from our favorite Thai place. But our apartment was empty, with a hastily scribbled note on the counter. Working late at the garage. Love you. It wasn't unusual for Ryan to work late. But that night, something felt different. Something felt different. Lately, Ryan had been distracted, taking mysterious phone calls, working odd hours. A knot tightened in my stomach as my mind wandered to dark places. Was history repeating itself? Was I about to lose everything again? Unable to sit still, I decided to bring dinner to him at the garage. But when I pulled up, the place was dark. Ryan's battered truck wasn't in its usual spot. My hands trembled as I called his number. Straight to voicemail. Just as panic started to settle in, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Mrs. Carter, please come to 1875 Highland Avenue immediately. It's about your husband. My heart stopped. Highland Avenue was in the industrial district, miles from Ryan's garage. With shaking fingers, I punched the address into my GPS and drove through the darkening city, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. The GPS led me to a massive modern building with sleek glass walls. Security gates opened automatically as I approached, and a uniformed guard at the entrance nodded respectfully. Mrs. Carter, he said. Take the executive elevator to the top floor. Executive elevator? Top floor? What was going on? The elevator doors slid open into a stunning office suite with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. And there, standing at a glass desk with his back to me, was Ryan. But not the Ryan I knew. Gone were the worn jeans and oil-stained t-shirt. Instead, he wore an impeccably tailored suit that probably cost more than our monthly rent. When he turned, his familiar warm smile was tinged with nervousness. "Liv," he said softly, using his special nickname for me. "I think it's time I told you everything." Before he could continue, the office door burst open. And there, like a scene from my worst nightmare, stood my father, my mother, and Preston Lockwood III. "What is the meaning of this?" my father thundered, his face already turning that familiar shade of purple. "Security said Olivia was headed up here." "What are you doing in the CEO's office?" "You." His eyes landed on Ryan. "You mechanics." Ryan straightened his tie and walked around the desk, his expression calm. "Actually, Mr. Kensington," he said smoothly, "I am the so—" Silence. My mother grabbed the back of a chair for support. Preston's mouth hung open unattractively, and my father, for the first time in his life, was speechless. But, my mother stammered, "You're a mechanic." Ryan smiled, taking my hand. "I own a chain of auto repair shops, yes. It was my first business, started with a loan from my college professor. But Mitchell Innovations is my main focus. We're a tech company specializing in revolutionary electric vehicle batteries. That's what those late nights at the garage were about. We were finalizing our new prototype." My head was spinning. "Why didn't you tell me?" Ryan's gaze softened. "Because I needed to know, Olivia. When we met, I had just made Forbes 30 under 30. Every woman I dated was only interested in my money, my status. But you fell in love with me when I was just a mechanic. You gave up everything for me. I had to be sure." My father muttered something under his breath. His business mind was finally catching up. "Mitchell Innovations," he repeated, realization dawning in his eyes. "The company that just revolutionized electric vehicle battery technology. The one every major car manufacturer is fighting to partner with." That's you?" Ryan nodded. "Our market valuation hit $122 billion last week. Not quite Kensington Global territory, but we're getting there." I bit back a laugh at my father's expression. All those months of looking down on my poor husband and Ryan had been building an empire right under their noses. "And now," Ryan continued, his voice taking on a sharper edge, "I'd like to discuss how you treated your daughter, the woman who, by the way, just became one of the largest shareholders in Mitchell Innovations."
When she married me.
My father's face paled. Kensington Global had been trying to break into the electric vehicle market for years. A connection to Mitchell Innovations would have been a game changer. "Now, see here," my father blustered, trying to regain control. "We were just looking out for Olivia's best interests." "By damning hers?" Ryan's voice was steel wrapped in silk. "By trying to get her fired? By making her cry herself to sleep for weeks?" I finally found my voice. "Daddy, you always taught me that Kensingtons never settle for second best." Well, I didn't. I married the most brilliant, kind, and successful man I've ever known. And I did it without knowing about any of this. "Olivia, sweetheart," my mother stepped forward, arms outstretched. "We were wrong.
We see that now.
Please come home." I looked around the magnificent office. Then at Ryan, my wonderful husband, who had let me find my own way, support myself, grow stronger. "I am home, Mom. But if you want to be part of our lives, you'll have to accept us on our terms. No more manipulation. No more control." My father looked like he was choking on something particularly unpleasant. "And what about Kensington Global?" he managed to say. Ryan smiled. "Well, sir, we've actually had several offers from your competitors for exclusive partnerships. But I thought, given the family connection, we might consider a different arrangement. If you're interested in discussing it as equals." The next hour was surreal. My father and Ryan talked business, while my mother fussed over my terrible apartment and insisted we move into a proper home. Preston had slunk away somewhere, probably licking his wounds. Later that night, back in our small apartment, I finally asked Ryan the question that had been burning in my mind. Why keep working at the garage? Why live like this when you have billions? Ryan pulled me close, brushing a strand of hair from my face. The garage keeps me grounded. It reminds me where I started. And this apartment? These months with you? They've been the happiest of my life. We made it ours, without silver spoons or trust funds. Tears welled in my eyes. I love you, you sneaky billionaire. He laughed. And I love you, my runaway heiress. Life changed after that night, but not in the ways people might expect. We did move, but into a modest house we chose together. I joined Mitchell Innovations as head of their charitable foundation, using our resources to help young entrepreneurs chase their dreams. Ryan still spent time at his original garage, teaching mechanical skills to underprivileged youth. My parents? They're trying. Mom still makes not-so-subtle hints about grandchildren needing trust funds, but Dad, surprisingly, has developed a genuine respect for Ryan. Their weekly business meetings often turn into long discussions about everything from classic cars to philosophy. As for me, I finally understood what Ryan meant about life being too short to live on paper. Sometimes, the best things come disguised as broken-down Ferraris and terrible vending machine coffee. But the best part? Every now and then, when we drive past our old apartment or grab takeout from our favorite Thai place, Ryan still looks at me the same way he did when he was just a mechanic and I was just a rebellious heiress. Because in the end, love doesn't care about bank accounts or business empires. It cares about who you are when everything else is stripped away. And we were simply Olivia and Ryan, a mechanic and a runaway heiress who found something better than billions. We found each other.